Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey, today we're going to look at a gun that is, well, it's pretty popular, there's no doubt about it. We're going to take a look at the Mini 14, okay? Now, this is the beast in question, right here, okay? So, this one is a little different than your standard ranch rifle that you're going to get when you go shopping for a Mini 14. The operating system, everything is the same except, okay, this guy here was actually produced for military, okay. It has a bayonet lug on it. It's set up for a bayonet. They marketed these things pretty much all over the world for military use. And so this one is actually a battle rifle, and it's a really good one. It's got some good stiff lumber to it. So once again, like quite often, if you need to whack somebody, you're not going to have to worry about everything coming apart on you. It's a solid gun. It has a little stiffer recoil spring in it because this one will fire the 5.56 cartridge. Now, I want to caution you, I really want to make this clear. 5.56 and 2.23 are not the same, okay? They are different. You can have pressure problems if you're using 5.56 in a 2.23 gun. So you want to be very careful about that. 5.56 is a higher pressure cartridge and can cause well, a lot of extra wear on the gun and can damage the gun or even cause the gun to blow up. It would be like trying to take a 9mm that's set up for standard 9mm ammunition and putting 9mm plus P or even plus P plus in it. You got to know something's going to go wrong. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do first is we are going to verify that the gun is unloaded, like we always do. We're going to take the magazine out, verify there's no ammunition in the magazine. We are going to open the bolt and lock it open, okay? And that way we can look inside the chamber and see that there is nothing in the chamber and the gun is indeed empty. All right, so it's a precaution, but we always take these precautions. Some people, for some reason, don't believe in taking the precaution of not having ammunition present in the work area where you're working on the gun. Myself, I'm a proponent of this. So look around, verify that there's no ammunition right here where you're working. Okay, you at least want it a few steps away so that you can't inadvertently slip something into the gun while you're not thinking. Because that kind of stuff does happen, all right? So we all make mistakes, we're all human. Okay, so let's move on. All right, the handguard on this gun, okay, is very easy to take off. All right, I need to reposition the camera a little bit. Okay, now, with the handguard, you simply grab it and pull it off the gun. It's a little stiff, but it does come off, I assure you, like that. And then it slips back. Now, that exposes the barrel. You're going to want to take this thing off periodically and make sure that you're not getting a rust problem in here on your barrel, on these ranch rifles and on this guy here, okay? So, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the trigger group out of the gun. All right, in order to do that, what we're going to have to do is push the trigger guard back, okay, until it unlocks and pull it out. Probably the easiest way to do this is stick a rod of some kind in there and kind of pull back on it, and by doing that, that will cause the trigger guard to pull back and out, okay? When that happens, the whole trigger group comes out in your hand, okay? All right, so once again, I'm going to do it one more time and make sure that I've got it in the camera. All right. So we're going to simply pull back, and that's going to pop that trigger guard right out like that, and then you can lift the entire trigger group straight out. All right, so once you've done that, the action will just pop right up out of the stock, and the stock comes back, and out she comes. All right. All right, before I go any further, start getting into solvent and things like that, I'm going to go ahead and put my gloves on to protect my skin from the gun cleaning solvent and all that. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and for a long time I didn't use gloves. But as I've gotten older, I've realized, you know, maybe it's a good idea not to present this as normal behavior, because it's not a good idea. Anytime you're working with chemicals and you don't know exactly what all is in them, put on some protection. It's not going to hurt you, okay? Okay, well, now that we've got our protection on, our gloves on, we're going to go ahead and take this puppy apart. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to release the operating rod and allow it to come forward, okay? Okay, so when you're disassembling your gun, probably the first thing you're going to want to do is pull out this op rod spring so that the thing isn't fighting you. And the easiest way to do that is just grab hold of it like this, pull back like that, and slide it out like that. Now that pulls your operating spring, your op rod spring out. From there, now you can move things around as you need to take this gun apart, all right? And it's not a difficult gun to get apart. You won't have any trouble with it. When you're going to put it back together, slide your op rod all the way forward, okay? Feed your spring up into your op rod like that, and now you're going to simply push it back toward the opening, push it into place, and you're going to drop the end of it right into this little hole that's right back here on the back of the receiver, and that end is going to fit right into place right there. So you're going to move it over and pop. Okay, that's got you reassembled on that. So that's how we get that apart. So from there, let's go ahead and take the bolt out of it. All right, so when we're going to take the bolt and the op rod spring out, or the op rod out, okay, the way this works is right back here on the back, there's a cutout. Okay, this cutout allows the op rod to push upward, okay? And there's a little skeg that fits into this slot right here. All right, so when you push the op rod back, you're going to see it pop up. Okay, which I missed, all right? There it goes, popped up. Once it pops up like that, now you can slide it out, and the whole op rod just pops right out. Okay, from there we're going to take the bolt out, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means come to visit us at askbill1911.com. Alright, so now we're going to remove the bolt, okay? In order to remove the bolt, it's kind of a pain in the butt, but you just rotate, okay? And you're going to want to slide it back a little bit. Now, you'll notice right up in here, if I can get the light in it real good for you to see it. Right here, this is the bolt lug, okay, that's on the left side of the bolt, okay? In order to get the bolt out, you're going to have to kind of pull it a little bit sideways, okay, and then slide it forward. All right, now you're going to want to twist the back end a little bit and kind of roll it out like that. Okay, now I don't know how clear that was, because if it's out of position a little bit, it doesn't want to come out. I'm going to let you know now, when you put this back together, this firing pin needs to be all the way back. Now it's a floating firing pin, so it doesn't just stay back there, okay? So you may get it part way in and realize you're going to have to get something in there and push that firing pin back in to get it to go into the gun right, okay? It's just one of the quirks of this particular gun. All right, so with that, now that we've got the bolt out, our receiver is now ready to be cleaned and our barrel is ready to be cleaned. Not a hard thing to do, but it's something that has to be done on a regular basis. So with all firearms, you're going to run into a similar problem, and that is they just get filthy over time. And if they get filthy, then they stop working the way you want them to. Particularly on semi-automatics, you end up with a situation where they don't cycle properly when they get real dirty. All right, so remember, you want to clean everything that gets dirty. Now, remember that the gases that operate this gun come out of this little port here, okay, and push the operating rod back. All right, so once that happens, these gases with carbon and all kinds of different dirt, burnt powder, all that, kind of escape into the inside of the gun. They get on the barrel, they get on everything. So you need to clean all of this out in here. If you notice, when I pull this out of here, you're going to see a very dirty patch. All right, and that's just from all that carbon and burnt powder and all the rest that's in here. So there's plenty to clean. It can be kind of a laborious process to get this right, but you want to make sure you do it. I mean, it's just, if you're going to have the gun, you need to keep it clean. So as you can see, there's a lot of that burnt powder and garbage that's coming out of here. All right, so we're going to probably go through a number of these patches. And a lot of this I'm going to do off camera, so you don't have to sit through it for an hour or so while I'm cleaning everything up. So let's get this guy scrubbed out, and we're going to go from there. Okay, so we pretty well got everything cleaned up. There is just one thing I did want to show you, and that is, this is called a recoil spring guide rod. So what does it do? Okay, it is kind of an important little part, all right? So what it does is, as the recoil spring gets pushed back, it keeps the recoil spring from bending and kinking, okay? You don't want it to do that, otherwise it doesn't work properly. So this guide rod, okay, keeps the recoil spring straight. Now the other end of the recoil spring goes up inside this tube, so there's very little of the recoil spring that is in a position where it can kink. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you a trick on how to clean this spring, and it just makes it real easy. Okay, first you just simply slide your guide rod out of the spring. That's pretty easy. Then you're going to take a patch and you're going to wet it with your material. This one's dirty, so we'll get another one. All right, so we get a clean patch, and we're going to put our solvent on that clean patch. And now we're going to take our little patch, and we're going to kind of fold it sideways, and we're going to slip it between the windings, all right? And then we're going to take and kind of pull it together like this. What that's going to do is that's going to mean that that cloth is completely surrounding the wire of the spring, okay? So by doing this, now we can kind of crank the spring like a giant screw, okay? And it will clean all of the surfaces of the spring at the same time, all right? And that way when we're done, we're going to have a nice clean spring. So sometimes it gets a little sticky and you got to fidget with it a little bit, but for the most part it's actually pretty easy to do. Once you get it going, it just kind of screws pretty easy. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to do, but it gives us a chance to talk about something else that is kind of important on these guns. I have had several ranch rifles come in that, now, I got to tell you, the guy that owned it shot an awful lot of rounds through that gun. But he didn't really take the time to lubricate the bolt very well. All right, now there are several products that you can use that will help to lubricate the bolt a little better. What happens is as the spring, or I mean as the bolt cycles in the gun, okay, it comes back and it rubs against the trigger, or I mean the hammer on the trigger group as it's coming back and forth, okay? And it literally wore through the bottom of the bolt. There were actually two of those rifles came in like that, where that bolt was just completely worn out on the bottom. So you're going to want to make sure that you lube this completely, that it's got good lube on it. There's if I can remember the name, it's called Tetra grease. Okay, it's a synthetic grease, and you can put that Tetra grease on the bottom of this bolt, and it's really slippery stuff, and it stays stuck to it real well. If you're going into real cold climates, you may want to consider just using oil on it. Tetra grease, well, any grease in very cold weather can bind up on you, so you don't want that to happen. All right, so now that we've got everything cleaned up, now we can start putting it back together and making sure everything is oiled. So we simply slip that spring into place, all right, and we're going to put some oil on it. But I'm going to wait to oil the spring until after I put the gun back together, and I'll explain why in a minute. One, it makes a heck of a mess. It's a lot easier once it's in position to put a few drops of oil, because you've actually got these ports right here that allow you to drop a little bit of oil in that spring, and cycling the action will spread it over all the windings and give you a good coat of oil. Okay. Now, I've said this before, a lot of people think that I over oil my guns, and so I'm going to tell you, if you are not from South Florida, the barrier islands of South Carolina, Brownsville, Texas, someplace coastal that has a prevailing wind that carries that salt air in on you, you don't have to use anywhere near as much oil. In fact, it may not be a good idea to do so. Oil picks up dust, and it's what they call fouling, and that oil kind of turns into a sludge that's very stiff, and it can slow the action down and cause it not to cycle properly. So you don't want to use a lot of oil on these springs for the most part. Now, down here in South Florida, we have a humidity problem that you can't imagine. I mean, it's beyond belief. And you take your gun out of the case, and all of a sudden you look down and your gun is wet, because it started sweating. The minute it hit that hot, wet air, it starts to sweat. And so it requires a little bit more oil down here and in coastal areas than you might think would be necessary. If you're from the interior of the country, this isn't something that's going to be something that bothers you very much. But here, it can be a problem. So the first thing we have to do is we got to put the bolt back in the gun. You're going to push that firing pin all the way back, all right, because it isn't going to want to slip through very easily if you don't, all right. Once you slip it through, you slide the bolt back into place, okay, and kind of put it into that parked position just for now, and that just keeps it from flopping out. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the op rod back in the gun. All right, so how does the op rod go in? Well, first, it's got to hook on that bolt right in this little passage. This little piece sticking out is going to fit right into that little slot right there. Okay, so we're going to kind of slip it into place, and we're going to slide that whole operating rod back, and it's going to get to a certain point, and that operating rod is going to pop in like that and down. Okay, once it's in and down like that, we're in the position we want to be in. All right, so from here, we're going to simply slide the whole thing forward like that. We're going to take our spring. Now, this is where not oiling it in advance makes things a lot easier, okay? and we're going to slip it in. Now we're going to take our guide rod and we're going to work it forward until it slips into that hole, okay? And now I'm going to show you this on the back of the receiver. There is a hole right here that this little pin on the end of the guide rod slips into, and it pops right into that hole. Now that's got your operating rod spring put back in place. Okay, so now that we've got the action basically put back together, now we're going to start looking at the places that we need to oil on this. Sometimes it's easier to oil these things when they're disassembled. You can spot on these things little spots that are shiny. Okay, any one of these shiny spots is going to need a little bit of oil in it. Okay, you don't have to go crazy, but you do need some oil here and there. Now if you get too much on there, just take your rag and wipe it off. It's not going to kill the gun. I'm a firm proponent of, I'd much rather have a gun that's over oiled than under oiled, because I don't want to have to replace parts. Alright, so now this bottle is not the best for oiling guns because it comes pouring out of here like crazy. On your trigger group, okay, you're going to want to put some oil in all of the contact points where you get wear. Okay, now you can see right here on the top of this hammer, this is going to need some oil. Alright, so I'd put a little bit in your spring here. Okay, you don't have to go crazy, especially on springs. Down here in South Florida, it's more of an issue because of the humidity, and this fine wire, if it doesn't have a coat of oil on it, will actually rust away. Seen that happen on a bunch of different guns too. And this thing just does not go slow on dropping oil, I'll tell you that. You want one drop and you get 10 gallons. Well, once you've got your oil in your trigger group, you can start putting your gun back together on the final reassembly, which again is very easy on this gun. This gun is not hard to put together and take apart. So we want to get some oil on our op rod spring. Okay, now I just take your bottle of oil and just kind of run it along the spring like that, let the oil run in. Okay, and that should be plenty. You don't have to go crazy. I'd put a little bit in here, and the reason why you want to put a little bit in here is because remember that spring is going to kind of flex in there, and it's going to rub against the walls on the inside of the op rod. Okay, so once you've got this guy oiled, you can simply cycle it back and forth a couple of times, and that's going to rub all the oil into place where you want it. So you're good to go with that. So we're going to take our rag and we're just going to dry off any excess because we don't want to turn it into a swimming pool, that's for sure. Alright, and there we go. Now, pretty easy to do, not a big problem. So let's go ahead and put the stock back on. You know what I should have done before I started is I should have taken this darn strap off because it's just in the way and it's a pain in the neck to get around. So I'm going to do that now if you'll be patient with me so I don't have to wrestle with this stupid thing. Alright, that's got the strap out of the way. Now I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so when we want to put her back together, we're just going to literally drop the action back into the stock. Okay, we're going to, let me point this out. Right up here in this little hollowed out area, that's where the front of the stock, this part right here, is going to slip into. Okay, going to slip in just like this. Okay, whoop, into place. Okay, and once it's in, the whole action just kind of scissors down. Let me do that again. Once the front end of it's in, okay, the whole action kind of scissors down into place. Okay, and that's how you seat that. Now when you want to put your trigger back in, okay, the trigger can kind of give you a little fit. So I'm going to take it back out of the stock and show you, because it's hard to see when it's in the stock, what has to fit where. Now, if you'll look, okay, let me see if I can point it out. Right in here, there's like a little slot, okay? This slot right here corresponds with this ridge right here on the trigger group. And when it fits back together, okay, make sure your trigger guard is all the way up, okay? And that is going to fit right into that spot and just slip right down. So then when you close your trigger group, it's going to hook here and lock it into place. From here, we're going to put the stock back on. All right. Easy peasy. Slip it into place. Drop stock back down. And you're going to slip that trigger group in just like I was showing you a second ago. That little notch is going to go together and it will drop straight into place. It just falls right in. From there, you close your trigger guard and press it all the way down until you hear it click, okay? Like that. Once you've done that, you're locked back together. Your gun has been reassembled, all except for the forward hand guard, or the upper hand guard, excuse me. And the upper hand guard is going to go back into place just like the lower did. It's going to slip under, okay? And then you're going to just push it down and it'll just pop right into place. That's got your M14, or excuse me, your Mini 14 put back together. And that's about all there is to this gun. Simple, straightforward, and easy to use. And it shoots great. This thing is a little tack driver. I'm Bill 1911, and we'll see you next time. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at askbill1911.com.